might be the significance of December 10th?
You might need to tell me first what's happening on December 10.
Okay.
I don't know.
No, what's going on December 10th?
December 10th, either the first publication of Playboy magazine, or 1 year the first night of the holiday of Hanukkah, or the 1948 signing of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, or D, all the above.
The first one.
First one?
Yeah.
Well, the first one is accurate. It does mark the first publication of Playboy magazine, but that's not why we're here. Do you think that human rights in the world are being honored?
Absolutely not.
I think human rights are overlooked and underreported.
As a parent, it's important for us to educate our children about, respecting other people and giving other people the dignity that they deserve. Every human deserves that. I mean, I think every generation does a little bit better than the last in terms of, respect and diversity and, racism and things like that. So I think that they could do better than my generation. That's certainly my hope.
Hi, I'm Barry Simon. Welcome to episode 9 of Conversations for Peace. Today we're focusing on the December 10th anniversary, the 71st anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which was signed in Paris in 1948 by all member nations of the United Nations. After World War II, these countries came together to stand for and be committed to the possibility of a world where people's rights all over the world were respected, where people had the basic rights of food, clothing, shelter, a clean environment, and so many others. Today, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights stands as the most translated text in the world, a testimony to its universality. So today we're going to be speaking with many people from senior human rights positions at the UN, to Sophia Gruskin at the USC Institute on Inequalities in Global Health. We're going to hear from Kavita, a young student, and her commitment to a world where human rights are respected. We have the grandson of Eleanor Roosevelt, Ford Roosevelt, who on his own stands for education and all students being versed in a solid education and awareness of civics that's so missing from today's curricula. We also have the president of the United Nations Association of San Diego, Bettina Hausman, joining us with some comments today. So enjoy the show. Thanks for being with us today. You've seen a lot of the world, and what would be possible if there was more peace, cooperation, and respect, mutual respect in the world? What would that make available in your community and in the world?
Problems would become solutions. We'd be seeing people for the talent and creativity they bring, not for their identities. We'd be valuing cooperation over competition, and we'd be making best and efficient uses of our resources to ensure that each and every one of us has what we are entitled to by birth, for we're all born free and equal in dignity and rights.
The basic human rights that you speak of.
The basic human rights, your right to express yourself, your right to be the very best that you can be, because you're not discriminated against or excluded by virtue of the color of your skin, your gender, who you love, what you worship, what you believe in. The idea of equality, of course, is that in all our differences, we have this common entitlement to be treated with dignity and respect. And when peace prevails, that becomes more possible to the advantage of us all.
I think it's the thing that we're missing most these days, and I think right now we're in a moment where what we have to do is to realize the solidarity we have amongst ourselves and with one another, and to recognize the ways in which different groups of people and different constituencies could learn from being able to work together. And I think that if we could all work together, at that point we might be able to overcome some of the intractable human rights problems of the day.
I think the challenge really to get there is we have to have an understanding of full democracy in our communities, full democracy in our schools, full democracy in the workplace environment, so everybody, child, adult, teenager, is treated with equity and respect.
In general, I think we have forgotten that this really means the person far away in a different country that comes into my neighborhood speaks a different language, but that's pretty much it. The same desires are there and the same basic understanding of what they need to thrive. And I think we've forgotten that as we're really becoming more and more in terms of the fearfulness, right?
And fear can drive us. We're in a really dark period right now. And I think until we can understand that there's light out there, as Martin Luther King said, the arc of justice will bend towards it will bend towards justice, but it's slow right now. How do we speed it up? And I think that comes down to education. It comes down to talking to people and not being afraid. And how do you get to not be afraid? That's the challenge we have to ask each other.
Once we have a care, commitment, and consideration for one another that's based off of international interconnectivity on empowerment and not one that's based off of economic gain or political gain, I believe we'll be able to understand, the basics of human rights and the basics of how people function. And it doesn't matter that I am not a adolescent girl in a developing country. I still can care for her. And I think it's very important that we understand that you do not have to be affected in order to advocate for people.
And what do you see as the primary human rights problems of the day?
70 years ago, we didn't see, when the Universal Declaration of Human Rights first came into being, we didn't understand the value and the importance around thinking about issues around disability, around immigration, around lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender rights. We didn't understand those things. So we think to ourselves now, 70 years later, what are the things now that we don't yet see? And from my perspective, I think it's about the intersectionality of these issues. It's about the ways in which they connect. It's about the ways in which inequalities in general strengthen one another in really negative ways, and about how we have to address these core issues if we're really going to get somewhere.
What do you see as steps that would begin to close the gap between the current situation and what you could see as possible?
So the first thing, we all need to comprehend that the world's undergoing massive change. Separate from massive fear, we're undergoing massive change. Change in population, change in technology, change in people on the move, people living in the city at a scale never seen before in human history. We have to be better at leading and managing fear in the midst of change. Now that brings me to the second thing we need is better quality leadership. Although our systems are under strain, if you ask me, the biggest challenge is to foster leadership of greater vision, of more generous, more compassionate, more courageous vision for inclusion rather than for division and separation. Thirdly, one of the big changes that is creating both possibility but also challenges that we have alive today, more young people than we've ever seen before in all of human history. That's the greatest natural human resource we've ever been gifted to. But they are locked into places of greater poverty, greater exclusion, more exposed to conflict, more exposed to contagion, to climate change. We have to find a way to transform the demography of opportunity, of influence and of participation. If we can do that, manage change, lead better, bring young people to the table of solutions, then we'll be okay. We will.
As a representative of USC, how does USC contribute to closing that gap?
Well, I think the first thing in terms of closing that gap is we have to listen to each other. And in this day and age, at this moment, that seems like a much harder thing than it used to be. So I think that the first thing is that people have to be able to listen and to engage with one another. And I think where USC is a really special place is that as a university, it recognizes that there are these insolvable problems where what we need to do is to come together across disciplines or across constituencies, and importantly, bridging university, community, and government. And that's something that USC can do, is to play a role where it can convene people in a way that perhaps some others can't.
The very understanding of education, how do we educate and what do we educate? As you said earlier, why is the UDHR not part of their curricula, right?
I think in public schools today, civics is not taught anymore.
Yeah.
So how do you understand how to be an actualized person and be an activist? And as a high school student, you're not going to get that. You're right. We're teaching in the 19th century model. Line all the desks up and teach students as though you want them to go to work in a factory. It's a barrier now. Education really stops kids, I think, from the generation coming up through middle school and high school, for instance. They're not getting enough exposure to what's going on in the real world unless they themselves face discrimination, hunger, homelessness, which too many do. We know that. But even there, solutions are not being offered in schools.
If the UDHR would have been taught in school, if that becomes something really front and center, we would know how to communicate one another. What are my rights? So my rights are your rights. So hence we're one, right?
And now these students are practicing their final.
They're practicing practicing their final here. But also, I mean, if that would be clear, that would be national holiday or an international holiday.
December 10th.
Yes,
Yeah.
to really
a world holiday.
world holiday, an international holiday where really everyone is just really thinking about what does mean to me and celebrating the very fact that we're one humanity.
Through education, people can be more versed, learn what's possible, learn about the other, and become more open to other cultures, other ways of life, other worlds that would enable people to get along better just automatically. Great. Thanks very much for your
Thanks,
time.
Barry. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Barry. You're awesome.
Thank you very much.
Keep it up.
What's the importance of human rights? Well, you've gotten maybe a bit of a taste of the importance of human rights, where it's missing, where it could be improved upon. And yet many people's comments, in many cases, especially among some of the students that we've talked with, was they didn't know what could make a difference. Whether it be dealing with the homelessness here in Los Angeles and those people's rights being disregarded, or the rights of women in parts of the world and the sex trade in the world, the slave trade, other areas where rights are just being trampled upon. We have leadership in many countries of the world that are ignoring the rights of their people and just plowing through proposals. Our own U.S. government has refused to sign initiatives that would take at least maybe one gun off the streets. Nobody's taking anybody's guns away, but maybe we could reduce gun violence in this country just a little bit by bringing some recognition of human rights to people, by improving education, by allowing people to be recognized, to be heard. That's part of our purpose here with Conversations for Peace. My personal rights, I don't feel have ever really been trampled upon. I live a pretty nice life. I'm from Portland, Oregon. I've had a nice upbringing. Things are okay. I don't need to be doing this project. But the possibility of a world that works for everyone has always rung true for me. And you too can make a difference. You can get on the phone with your congressperson. You can write a letter. You can be kinder to the homeless person down the street. You can provide food to people that are hungry these days in your own neighborhood or across the world. Whatever you can do to make a little bit of help to somebody less fortunate can make a big difference. So thanks for who you are. Thank you for watching our show today. Please let us hear from you. Conversationsforpeace@gmail.com. Send your comments, send your videos. Thanks for tuning in. God bless you all. Happy holidays. Enjoy your human rights because they are fragile and they can be taken away at any moment. Meanwhile, peace.
Stand up for peace on earth. Yes, we're gonna find the way. Stand up for peace on earth. And we're gonna start today. Stand up for peace on earth. Yes, we're gonna find the way. Stand up for peace. Stand up for peace. Stand up for peace, peace today. Stand up for peace, stand up for peace, stand up for peace, peace today. Stand up for peace, stand up for peace, stand